check this. Back meeting. I can check this. No. System media notification usually people media check. You gifting something else? happened? Why it does not work? Right away became like that. So hot. It's amazing, Rita.
want to be in now.
Push. Take him, please. Go play there with him. I need to play with him.
Hi, baby, come.
Here's the voice, and he goes. Okay, go.
Hi.
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 Let me grab my headphones. Hold on a second.
Okay, now I can hear. I can see. Sometimes I
Can we
can.
see Bubble?
Oh, just a moment. Where you disappeared?
Hello.
Hello. Why you disappeared? I just saw you.
Can you see me?
Not now. Must be.
Oh, are you Leah?
I am there.
Yes, I am.
I am here, but I don't see you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, can you see me, Leah?
No.
Yes.
Oh, you can see me, but Marisa can't see me.
Oh.
But now I can see you. Hi.
Oh, good. Hi, this is Michelle. Hi,
Hi,
everybody.
You disappeared.
Hi, Michelle. Nice to
What?
meet you.
Okay.
Hi. We're excited.
Me too. This is going to be fun.
Hello.
Rita, are you still having technical difficulties?
Oh, you disappeared again.
Do you have Zoom open full screen on your computer?
Yes, on my tablet because I see you.
Okay. Hi, is that Mira?
Yes, hi.
I'm Leah. Nice to meet you. This is so fun. I love doing challah bakes. I'm so happy to be doing this.
Awesome. My husband's here with me too. He's going to bake with us.
Oh, nice.
Hey,
Hi, I'm Leah.
Alex.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Rita.
Leah, we're so excited. We've made challah a few times, and every time we have not made successful challahs. So this is going to be exciting.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Great. Hopefully we'll be able to make it work. Let's see. I think some people just joined.
There. Hi, Michi.
I see Danielle is on the call. Hi, Danielle.
Are we supposed to, do you want us to get our yeast ready?
You could just take out all the ingredients. You could use this time to take a bit. We're still a little bit early, so.
Okay. So we don't have to prepare it or anything yet?
Nope, we're going to do it together.
Oh, great.
Hi, my name is Anna, and Leah, I see your name on Challah for Dummies on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, that's my Facebook group. I started it in December.
I figure you were the administrator or whatever you.
Yeah.
It's kind of popular, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gotten really big. I think probably fueled by pandemic baking.
Yes,
Guess.
seriously. I'm enjoying it. I really like
Good.
it.
I'm so glad. Yeah, everybody, you know.
I look at all the pretty pictures of the challahs that people make and everything. It's really cool.
What do I need? You should put up a new deal. Okay. And then you need some stuff in. Okay, I'm going to move all this stuff so we don't. Make sure you put it next up there. Leah, how much is one of these?
How much is one of them? I think it's,
Two and a fourth teaspoon.
oh yeah, 2 1/4. There we go. Thank you.
Teaspoon.
2 1/4.
Yeah.
2 1/4.
Mm-hmm.
And helping us earn the JP Power Award for highest member satisfaction among commercial health plans in the Illinois-Indiana region.
Well, someone's radio's on.
I think somebody has their ring.
You could. What is the next try?
No, mommy's in a Zoom.
Yours.
Battery 20%. Connect.
Hi, Leah.
Hi, I'm on my phone, so I have to scroll through. So I don't know who said that.
Hava. Good luck tonight, babe.
Thanks. Thanks for coming to the Challah class. Oh, it's Ira and Myra. Hello, neighbors.
Hi, it's just me. I just didn't know how to change the name.
No problem. So we still have a few minutes before we start, so you can, if you're going to bake with us, then just take this time to gather your ingredients.
I'm just gonna watch. I want to see how you do it.
No problem. And I'm keeping on scrolling through to see who's joining us. Let's see.
Can you see me?
You'll have to tell me who's speaking because I don't have all the screens up on my phone at once.
Okay, does not matter. But you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm using my phone because then I can put it up on the.
Okay, I'm mixing flour with sugar, 1/3.
Yeah, so we're gonna do it together. So you can wait a little bit if you want.
And that's the yeast also. With water.
Yeah. Because we're just gonna give it another minute or two and then we'll start.
You know why you disappearing every time?
I was just putting connecting my headphones.
Stay like this.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna give it one more minute and then we'll start.
Okay.
Oh, I see my mom just joined. Hi, Ima.
Uh-huh.
Okay, how much salt?
It's 3 in the morning in Israel.
Oh,
That's
wow.
where my mother is.
Oh,
2 in the morning, 2 in the morning, because they just changed the clock.
wow.
Thanks for staying up.
Uh-huh.
So I guess while we're gonna give it one more minute, but while we're waiting, I'll just talk a little bit about me, which is a little bit of a funny thing, but here we go. So my name is Leah. For anybody who doesn't know me, I live in Skokie with my husband and 2 little boys. We moved here right before last Pesach, and we love the community. We love Skokie Valley. We're really happy to be here. I've been baking for many years. I was taught by my mom, and then I just continued and kind of ran with it. And I started my first at-home bakery from when my college professors went on strike when I lived in Israel, and then I started selling stuff out of my college apartment. And my husband, who was not my husband or my boyfriend then, was my best customer. Now we're married. So here we are. I guess we'll get going. It's about 7:05. Let's just see. So if you have any, I would say just mute yourself. But if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself to ask, or you can type them in. It might be hard for me. I'll try to catch any questions that people type in, but if I miss it, just let me know. And then as we go, yeah, you can just ask and hopefully I'll be able to answer. So we're gonna make challah. This is a series that I put together with Skokie Valley, and we're gonna do all kinds of things related to bread. So bread and yeasted dough. So we're gonna start with challah, and then next time, hopefully we're gonna be doing babka together. And then we're gonna try out bagels, and then I think that, yeah, it'll be really fun. We're gonna do all kinds of stuff. So stay tuned. And if you have any feedback or anything like that, you can email me or find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Challah Baking for Dummies, where we talk about all kinds of things related to challah. It's a lot of, so if you're on Facebook, definitely check. And let's get going. So hopefully you have the recipe in front of you, but if you don't, that's okay. We'll read it out together. So we're gonna start with blooming the yeast, activating the yeast. So here I have my yeast. I buy like those big bricks, and I just put them in Ziploc bags, and I put it in the pantry, and I use it like that. And I have hot water over here. So I'm using instant yeast, but you can use active dry yeast too. I think somebody had a question about instant yeast versus active dry yeast. How can you convert instant yeast to active yeast? So I just use the same measurements. I know that there are some websites that say that you can use, that you don't have to use the same amount, that you can use a little bit. I think it's a little less for instant yeast, but I use equal instant to active dry, and it always comes out perfect. So that's what I do. You don't really have to proof instant yeast. You can really just add it directly to the dry ingredients. But I like to proof it. I think that it kind of gives it a head start, especially because we're adding it to a mixture that has lots of sugar and eggs and oil in it. And that gives the yeast, makes it a little bit harder for the yeast to do its job. So I like to give it a head start by proofing it in water. Hey, Rachel, nice to see you. So we're gonna start, and I've used fresh yeast before too. Fresh yeast is like a whole other beast. It's also really great to work with, but for fresh yeast, you do have to use a different amount. So I would look that up before you try using fresh yeast. So we're gonna dissolve 1 tablespoon of yeast in 1.5 cups of warm water. And we're gonna add in 2 tablespoons of sugar to that too. And then just give it a little mix. So 2 tablespoons of sugar with your yeast and hot water. For instant yeast, I like to make sure that my water is really hot. I usually take it to 110 degrees. I have a thermometer and I usually check it. You definitely don't have to, but that's how I get the best. I find that I get the best rise out of my yeast. 110 degrees is like taking your tap and putting it all the way on the hot water and then bringing it closer to you by like a teeny amount. So you want the water fairly hot. Like I said, you don't really have to do that. You can really just dissolve add the yeast to the flour and it's fine. But here we go. So we have the yeast, we mixed it into the water and the sugar, and we're just gonna let this sit. Sometimes my yeast kind of clumps up at the top. And if it does that, I just kind of give it a little extra stir, just to separate it so it's not so clumpy. 2 tablespoons of sugar. 2 tablespoons of sugar, yeah. And there's a request to everybody to please mute yourself unless you have a question. Do I always wear gloves? No, I don't, but I bake a lot of sourdough and I find that sourdough is really acidic, and I wash my hands a lot when, obviously I wash my hands a lot when I bake, and when I do so much bread baking and so much sourdough bread baking, it really ruins my nails. Ruins my nails. And also I happen to have nail polish. No. And also, when you knead the dough later, you'll see that the heat of your hands transfers to the dough, And this kind of protects that a little bit. It stops that. So I don't know if it really makes much of a difference, but if you're using really hot water, you don't need to really want your dough to overheat too much, but you don't have to wear gloves. Really, you don't. You can just use your regular hands and you're fine. Sure.
Yeah. May I ask you a question about the
Of
hot
course.
water for the yeast?
Yeah.
We just use tap water. Does it warm tap water? Does that need to be hotter? To
No.
activate the yeast?
No.
No?
No. I just use, instead of like using, so if you're using active dry yeast, I think you want it to just be warm. But if you're
Okay.
using instant yeast, you want it to be hotter than you would
Oh, okay.
if you were using
water.
active dry yeast. Yeah.
Yeah, we're using active. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so while we're waiting for the yeast to kind of do its thing, you can see that it is kind of bubbly. Somebody's saying when the phone icon comes up, you can't see me. Can you not see me? Can everybody see me?
We can't
You can
see
see
you.
me. You can't see me?
There
Just
we go.
scroll.
No, I
I
cannot
can
see you. All
Just-
time you disappeared.
Maybe
You can just
scroll.
do pin
You,
video.
yeah, pin my video. So there should be a dots in the corner of my video. So click that and then click pin video, and then I'll be the person that's showing up.
Oh, I don't have a pin.
Okay.
You might
Um,
be able to double click on her picture. That's what I did to pin it.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna continue with the flour. So we're gonna measure it out. I'm gonna tell you what I do. It's 6 cups of flour. I have my kitchen scale over here that I use. I love my kitchen scale because it means that I get the same results every single time. I don't have to worry about putting too much flour in the cup. Because sometimes when you measure the flour, you can accidentally pack it in a little too much, and then your challah can end up a little bit dry. So I like to measure it every time. That way I know that I'm not putting in too much flour. If you don't have a kitchen scale, no big deal. You could just measure out 6 cups. But I like to do, and that's why I put the weight of the flour in grams in the recipe. So it's 753 grams if you have a scale. And if you don't, you can just measure out 6 cups. Also, I find it to be really easy because when I'm doing the recipe really quickly, usually what I'll do is I'll just add everything in the bowl. I don't activate the yeast. I just put the yeast in, all the water, all the sugar, all the flour, and I just do it really quickly. And the scale just makes it a lot easier because you don't have to measure out 1 cup at a time. You can just dump all the flour in at the same time. So we're gonna do that now.
Do you sift your flour?
I don't. And I use bread flour, but you can make this recipe with all-purpose flour too. If you use bread flour, I find it gives you like a chewier texture. It has more protein in it, so it makes for a nice, chewy, kind of stretchy bread. If you use regular flour, it's a little more. It could be a little more tender, like cake-like.
But you don't sift it.
I don't sift it. So I buy King Arthur, but you can use any kind of bread flour is good. I know Hungarian sells really cheap bread flour. It's like $3. It's Glicks. And I've used that bread flour and it comes out really great too. So I have my flour weighed out and I'm just going to continue going down the list of ingredients and I'm going to add everything in. So the next thing is 1/3 cup of sugar. If you like your challah sweeter, you can add a little bit more. If you like it a little less sweet, you can add a little less. I wouldn't cut out too much because it'll change the texture, but you can definitely cut down a little bit. Also, if you want to make this recipe whole wheat, you can start by replacing 2 cups with whole wheat flour. And then if you like that and you like the texture, the next time you make it, do 3 cups. And you could do a little more each time, or you could do spelt. You can replace some of the flour with spelt. Those are both good. So we did 1/3 cup of sugar, and now we're going to do 2 teaspoons of salt. Is everybody with me so far? Does anybody have any questions?
So far, so good.
Super. Okay, so 2 teaspoons of salt. I use pink salt, pink Himalayan sea salts. I've heard, but I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that it has some more minerals in it that help the yeast rise. I don't know. I like it anyways.
Where do you buy it?
I buy a big bag on Amazon. It's like 5 pounds of salt. And I actually go through.
Could you repeat what it is? I didn't hear what it was. What kind of salt?
Yeah, I'm going to show you the package. Just give me 1 second because I have it right here. I think I have it right here. If I can find it easily, I'll show you. I buy it on Amazon. It's 5 pounds of pink Himalayan sea salt.
Pink salt.
I buy 5 pounds at a time. So there you go.
That's a lot of salt.
It's a lot of salt, but you know, I go through it. So
Yeah, for sure.
what is the least amount of salt you need for, somebody said, what is the least amount of salt you need for the recipe? Salt affects the rising time. So if you cut down on the salt, your dough will rise quicker. You can cut it in half and see how, if the dough behaves. And then if the dough doesn't behave, then add more. And if the dough behaves, then cut it down a little more for next time. I would say just experiment with it. I haven't tried to cut down the salt in the recipe because I think, you know, it gives it flavor and taste and kind of balances it. But I know some people are watching their sodium intake. So you can just try with 1 teaspoon and see how that is. Is sea salt preferred over kosher salts? Yes. Kosher salt has larger granules. So it's going to be less salty than fine salt. So if you use sea salt, kosher salts, and that's your preference, I would look up the conversion of kosher salt to sea salt before you do it. I don't know exactly what that is off the top of my head, but I would definitely check before you do it.
Every time the person, wait. Every time the person whose phone number starts with 224 goes on, we don't get to see you. There's something with the phone. So
I would ask that everybody just mute themselves, and then you can also pin me.
I did that, but as soon as that phone, somebody's on that phone or does something, then you disappear.
Okay, that person left. So
okay, fine.
I think that
it's not my phone.
Hopefully
it's not my phone.
Hopefully that'll help. Okay, so let's keep on going. We solved the phone issue. Hopefully that person will come back on a different number. But in the meantime, let's keep on going. So we have the flour, the sugar, and now we're gonna start with our wet ingredients. So I just put it straight in. Some people would want to measure their wet ingredients in one bowl and then dump it in. I just like to save time and save energy, so I just do it all in one bowl. So we're gonna crack in the egg, and then we're gonna add in the honey and the oil and the yeast as well. So I put the measurements, the scale measurements for the honey too, because I don't like to go teaspoon by teaspoon, but you can definitely do 1 teaspoon at a time. So it's 30 grams or it's 4 teaspoons. If you don't want to use honey, I know some people don't like to use honey. So you can just do substitute it with an equal amount of sugar. But I like the flavor the honey gives to the recipe. So I'm going to put in my yeast mixture. You can see it's really nice and foamy. Can you see that? So we're going to dump it in. There we go. And we're going to do the oil, 1/2 cup of oil. And then we're going to start mixing.
Is that canola oil?
Yeah, so I use canola oil. Some people use vegetable oil or olive oil. I like that canola oil is really neutral, so that's my preference. But if you like the flavor of olive oil or you only have vegetable oil, then go with that. So I have everything in here. So I'm just mixing it with a spatula. You can
Okay, flour, sugar,
use whatever you want. We're just
honey,
hydrating. You can-
egg. What else?
So we're just gonna mix it. Was that a question? I don't know if that was a question. We have the yeast, the water, sugar, flour, salt, egg, honey, and oil. And you can see this out any
Hey, Leah.
Leah, you're frozen.
Oh, hello. I'm back. I hope I
Hi.
wasn't in such a weird face when I was frozen. You know how sometimes that happens, that people freeze and they have the weird faces?
So our dough seems kind of dry.
Okay, so you can add a little bit of water.
Okay.
I would add like a tablespoon at a time. I wouldn't add too much at once because you might end up with the other problem, with the opposite problem. If your dough is a little bit too wet, you can add a little bit of flour. I prefer to add in flour than water. But if you do find that like with this recipe consistently, it's a little bit dry, then it's possible that you're packing your measuring cups too full when you measure out the flour. So you can see that my dough came together. It's a nice cohesive mass. It's still pretty rough, but it actually is really nice. There's no big patches of raw flour. It's a nice ball. So you can see that. So now what we're gonna do, so you can see, can everybody kind of see how it's like one ball, but it's not too sticky. It's not too wet. It's very rough and ragged still, but we're gonna mix it and then we're gonna knead it and then it'll come together nicely. So we're gonna start to knead. So this is how I knead. It's like any other bread if you've made other breads before. So you wanna take, can you use a mixer? You can totally use a mixer. You could totally use a mixer. I would use the bread hook. I had somebody last week ask me if they can use the whisk to knead their dough, and you're gonna totally break your KitchenAid or your mixer or whatever. And if you have a bread machine, you can definitely use a bread machine too. Just follow the manufacturer's instructions because I know that there are often there's a special order for putting it in a bread machine usually. So you can see it's not too sticky. I'm gonna add in like a tiny bit of flour for my counter and for my hands because it's just a little sticky. It just makes it a little harder to knead, but I don't want to add in too much. I just use a little. So I just have maybe like this much flour. I don't know if you can see. So I just kind of sprinkle it on top, and then whatever's extra I put on the side. So when you knead, you use the palms of your hands, push the dough out, and then fold it back towards you. Push the dough out, fold it towards you. And when you're folding it, you give it a quarter turn. So push it out, fold it towards you. You can see this dough is like really easy to work with. It's really nice, it's soft, it's not too sticky. I love kneading bread. I really find it to be a calming process. So you want to knead it for a while, like about 10 minutes. Wow. Which is a long time. So if you're feeling like you don't have energy to knead your dough for 10 minutes, which I certainly understand, or you don't have time, really what you could do is cover your dough. So take a piece of plastic wrap or a towel and just set your dough down and cover it. Let it rest for a few minutes and then come back to it. And what that does is it allows the gluten strands to relax a little bit and it'll actually be easier to knead, and it helps with the gluten formation in general. So you can actually get away with less kneading and get the same results. So for instance, like sometimes what I'll do if I'm doing it by hand is I'll knead it for 5 minutes, and then I'll give it a 5-minute break, and then I'll knead it for another minute or 2, and then that'll be it. But you can see that even after like a very little amount of kneading, the dough's already a ball. It's not like a smooth ball, but you can see how much has come together already. So we're gonna just keep on going. And this challah recipe, you can use it for, I've used it before for babka too, if you have a good filling and it comes out nicely. So kind of like an all-purpose yeast dough. Does anybody have any questions while we're doing this?
It should be sticky or not?
Not so sticky. You can see that mine is not, it's not so sticky. I think it's more interested in sticking to itself than it is to me.
Shall I put more the flour on the table?
If yours is if yours is a little bit sticky, then yes, put a little bit of flour on the table.
Is it possible to knead it too much?
Yeah, so you can over knead it, but if you're kneading it by hand, it's going to be really hard to over knead it. If you're kneading it in the mixer, then yeah, you can over knead it. I wouldn't do more than 10 minutes with a mixer. I was in a Facebook group, one of these bread Facebook groups that I'm in, and somebody mentioned that they turned on their mixer and they left the kitchen and they forgot, and then they came back an hour later.
Oh, yeah.
And they realized that they had their mixer still on. So that if you do that, you're going to over knead your bread. It's going to turn to goo. But somebody's asking cinnamon raisin. Totally, you can turn this into cinnamon raisin. If you want to add raisins to your challah, you can add them now. Just knead them in. Any flavoring, really, you can really knead in.
I have a question about chocolate chips. I tried adding chocolate chips to the challah and ruined it completely.
You ruined it. How did you ruin it?
Because I put it in the raisins. I had instructions to put in right at the beginning, like right when you're kneading it, like you are now.
Okay.
So now and it was very successful. Then I said, oh, well, I'll do chocolate chips. You must put it in at the same time. But what happened was in the rising, I guess the chocolate chips got melty. And then when I kneaded it the second time, after it rose, I got like round dough. It was like awful. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're doing chocolate chips, if your dough is too warm, they are going to melt. That's actually happened to me before. I forgot about it until you mentioned it now. But yeah, it's really annoying. The way to do it is if you're going to do chocolate chips, I would make sure that either you add it kind of towards the end of kneading, or you use a mixer so that you're not adding too much heat from your palms into the bread. Or you wait.
Go ahead.
I would just say, or you just wait until your dough is a little bit cooler. You could put it in the fridge maybe, and then add them in at the end of your kneading process.
What if you put them in when you were making the strands, like right before,
Yeah, you could definitely do that. It just might be hard to poke them into the strands.
Yeah. But they won't melt then when the strand part is rising?
No. It probably melted from either the heat. I don't know if you mix it by hand or a mixer, but when you mix your dough a lot, so probably just melted from the heat of your palms.
Well, it also could have, because somebody told me, I've been doing this and may be wrong, putting the oven like at about 110 degrees and then shutting it off. And
I mean, that's a really nice way to get your dough to rise.
So maybe it got there.
But that's probably too hot for chocolate chips.
Yeah.
So you can see that. You can see the difference from a few minutes. The dough is really nice. It's smoother. It's a ball. There's no patches. There's still a little, like it's not totally smooth. And one thing that we want is we want our dough to stretch a lot. without tearing. So you can see it's stretching nicely, but it's still tearing a bit. So we're gonna need a little bit more. It's a nice workout for your biceps.
Mama busy now. You listen. Mama doing something. When I finish, then I will play with you. I have a doggy.
You have a dog?
Yeah, he's waiting to play. Playtime. It's okay.
So when did you say to add the raisins?
I would add the raisins now. Add it while you're kneading. I usually add it, you know, kind of towards the beginning of kneading, but it doesn't really matter. It's just easier to add in towards the beginning.
Because
Once you
I
get to
saw
the end,
some recipes for raisin bread where you put the raisins in the batter.
yeah, so it just makes it a little easier when you add it in towards the beginning of kneading, because as you knead, they'll incorporate into the dough. If you wait until the dough is kind of like this, it just gets harder to mix them in. That's all.
So, but what about just as you're adding all the other ingredients?
Yeah, you can definitely do it then.
Now, this is what we're doing now. This is instead of the 1.5 hour to raise, right?
No, so it is gonna rise after this. So I'm gonna show you with my dough, because I have some that I made a little earlier that I let rise. So I'm gonna show you how I do the braiding after this. But for you, for all of you who are baking with me, if you would like to do it tonight, then wait until your dough rises for about 1.5 hours, and then continue on with the braiding. Or you could put it in the fridge overnight and continue on with the process tomorrow. And then if you do that, I would not keep the dough in the fridge for more than 24 hours because you don't want it to get ruined. And also, when you take it out of the fridge, to braid it and continue on with the process, just take the chill off of it before you start working with it. So for me, it depends how much dough I'm working with, but if for this amount of dough, that takes usually about 1/2 hour, 45 minutes. If you're doing like a big 5-pound recipe of challah, that will take about 1 hour or longer even sometimes. But you just don't, it's just easier to work with when the dough is closer to room temperature.
If you're making this much challah, the amount you're making now with the 6 cups of flour, do you have to take challah? Do you have to take challah?
Oh no, I take challah when I do 5 pounds of flour.
Okay, so if you're making just 6 cups, you don't have.
That's right. I think some people take it, but they don't do the bracha. But my minhag is not to take it unless I do 5 pounds. Okay, so you can see like already it's really nice and smooth. And hopefully yours is like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking great, everybody. Look at this, all this dough looks so good. Let's see, I'm scrolling to see if anybody else has a picture. Looks good. Looks great. Okay, so at this point, you can still knead it for another minute or two. When you have really good gluten formation, it helps you get more height on your challah. So sometimes people say that their challah kind of doesn't get good height. That could be because of the braiding, but it could also be because it wasn't quite kneaded enough. Because when you knead it enough, the gluten strands form really nicely, and then you can get more height. So I think I'm about done because I'm tired. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the bowl that I mixed all my dough up in before, you can see, and I'm going to put in a little bit of oil, just a tiny bit. Not a lot. That's probably even too much. Just gonna like,
You didn't have to
Take-
wash the bowl first?
no, I mean, you can, because sometimes when you do this, the bowl kind of gets crusty, especially if you put the bowl overnight in the fridge. But it's the same thing. Like, it's challah, and this is all challah, the stuff that you mix the challah with. So no, I don't wash it, but you could if you want. And then I put it like smooth side down into the bowl where the oil is, and then I just turn it around so that it's coated on all sides. You don't want too much oil. You don't want the oil to like puddle on the bottom of the bowl. You just basically want to cover it so it doesn't dry out. And then you cover this with plastic wrap or any other kind of wrap that you have in your house. You like a beeswax wrap, that works nicely too. Some people use a wet or a damp towel. You could do that also. Basically, just the point is that you don't want your dough to dry out. And that's why we oil it, and that's why we cover it as well. So I'm gonna get some plastic wrap and cover this up. And then we're gonna do some braiding together. We're gonna talk about different fun
Now,
things you can do with your challah.
If you're gonna let that rise now, if you were gonna let it rise now, where would you put it?
So you want to put it in a warm place, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. The warmer the environment is, the quicker it will rise. The cooler the environment is, the slower it will rise. So that's why some people either put it in the oven, like they'll turn the light on in the oven and put it in there because it kind of makes a warmer environment, or you can boil a glass of water in the microwave and then take the water out and put the bread in, and it'll just sit there and it'll be really warm and cozy for the bread to rise. Or just on your counter. If it's really cold in your kitchen, it'll just take longer. Like if it's really hot and humid, it will take quicker. So in the summer, in the middle of the day, if I have the ovens on in my kitchen, bread rises really fast. In the winter, it just takes longer. But yeah.
But you don't have to put it into an oven. Like someone told me I had to turn on the oven and then turn it off and make sure it's like about 110, 120 and put it in the oven then.
You don't
And
have to do that. No, I think that's just like, it just guarantees more of a rise. Like sometimes I see people have questions like, help, my dough isn't rising. And then sometimes I'll tell them to like put it in a warm spot, like put it in their oven or their microwave. And usually that'll do the trick. Like sometimes their yeast is just being a little sluggish. So I think if you put it in your oven, it just kind of gives it more of an ideal environment to rise in, but it's definitely not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay, great. No problem. What is proofing? Something wants to know. Proofing is when the yeast rises. So we proofed our yeast at the beginning by dissolving the yeast in the water and the sugar. So basically what it's doing is it's activating the yeast and letting it dissolve and rise. So yeah, that's proofing. Any other questions? Let me just make sure there are no other questions here on the chat that I missed. Can you use a mixer? Yes. Cinnamon raisin bread? Yes, we answered that. And the proofing.
Are we rising our dough now? Are we all supposed to have it in plastic wrap?
So yes. So you're gonna let your dough rise now. And I'm gonna move on to the braiding because I have, so you can see here the difference. This is the exact same amount of dough. Can you see that? This dough is the one we just made together. So there's some shadow here, so hopefully you can see. And this dough is one that's been rising on the counter and it's ready to go. So you can see how nice and puffy it is and how much more there is, right? Because it has all that nice air in it. So we're going to, and because I did the oil thing, when the plastic wrap comes off, it doesn't stick to the plastic wrap. It's just nice, smooth. You can see how it's like full of air. It's nice and stretchy. You can see the gluten strands over there. You can see how nice and stretchy that is. It's beautiful. Okay, and that's gonna be your dough after it's done rising. So I'm gonna turn this out. This is a great tool to have, by the way, if you're baking bread. It is a little spatula. They're only a few dollars on Amazon. You can see it has this like nice
Oh,
round
yeah.
side. So you can use it to scrape out your bowls. It's such a great tool. I have 2 different scrapers that I use when I bake bread. Obviously, like you don't need these. It's just kind of fun to have and they make it a little easier. I have this one, my bench scraper, and this one, my bowl scraper. So this is really great because you can use it to divide bread too. So this is how I'm going to show you how I get.
What is that thing called again? The metal thing? My phone rang when you were
Oh,
saying.
that's okay. It's a bench scraper.
Bench, BENCH?
Yeah, a bench scraper. I have a question from Tova Garfinkel. That's not a question. Hey, Tova. Okay, so we're going to take this and we're going to section off some dough. I like to, no problem, Tova. I like to weigh out my dough strands so that I have even challah. So if you have a scale, you can do this. If you don't want to do this, you definitely don't have to do it, but I find that it makes really nicely shaped challah because all the strands are even. But I've definitely done it the other way too. This is just an extra step. So I like to do, typically I make 2 different size challahs. I'll make a 1/2 pound and a 1 pound. If you're going to go with a 1/2 pound, you're going to get about 2 ounces, 2.3 ounces per strand. I like to add a little extra because you lose a little bit of moisture when it cooks. And for 1 pound, I do 4.2 ounces per strand. So we're just going to measure out 4 of these. So 4 sections of dough. If you don't have a scale, you're just going to do this freehand right now. It's just going to take me an extra minute.
What were the measurements again?
I'm going to do a 4 braid. So I do a pound divided by 4, and then I add a little extra. So I do like 4.3 ounces. Or if you're going to do small challahs, like a 1/2 pound, then I do about 2.3 ounces. I just add the extra 0.3 because it gives a little extra dough. Because you lose a little bit of weight when it cooks. Okay, so I have my little blobs here, right? And I'm going to show you how I use my dough to get a lot of height when I bake my challah. So I'm going to show you what I do. So I'm going to take my hands and kind of stretch them out over here and pull back. So I'm making little circles. Do you see how I did that? I just kind of folded it in on itself from the bottom. So I have a little circle. And then I'm going to take the circle on my counter and I'm just going to give it a little, I'm just going to kind of rotate it and tuck the ends under, tuck the bottom under. So rotate it, tuck it under. And when you do that, you create a little tension in your dough. And what that does is that when it rises, because there's that extra tension, it helps it rise up instead of rising out. So you end up with a nice tall challah instead of having like a pancakey challah. So we're going to do that with the rest of them. So I'm going to show you. So I just kind of pull and then pull towards the center, and I do that on all sides. And then, so you can see it makes that nice parcel, that nice circle. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. So you just kind of move it around on the counter a little bit, tucking the sides in. And then
So
when you do this,
you don't knead again after the first rising. You don't knead again.
no, I don't punch it and let it rise a second time. I know people that do. You can do that if you want to. It doesn't hurt the dough at all. But I don't do that because I don't have time for it, but you could. And then also, sometimes I do it if I'm running out of, if I don't have time to bake the bread right away. So like it's Friday, I'm baking bread, I let the dough rise on the counter, then I realize I have to run out to pick something up from the store, but it's all ready to braid. What do? Give it a punch, flip it over, put it back in the bowl, and then when I come home, it'll be ready to go. Somebody wants to know what is the...
You don't really knead it again.
No, I definitely don't need it again. The most I'll do is another punch. Somebody wants to know what's the brand of my scale. It's called Nourish. I bought it on Amazon. It's really simple. You can see, I think it was like 10 bucks. And I bake a lot of sourdough, and it's just really helpful to have to weigh out my ingredients and to weigh out the portions. And if you want to connect with me afterwards, I'm happy to send you a link too. So you just do this. So you can see now I have my 4 balls of dough. So if I'm making a huge batch of challah, like sometimes I'll make 10 pounds at a time, what I'll do is I will take the extra time to do this for my entire challah dough. I'll take a sheet pan and I'll spray it with Pam. And then I will portion out the balls and put it on the sheet pan and cover them as I go. And then when I'm done, I'll just go back to the beginning and start braiding. But it actually makes the braiding much quicker because instead of, you know, portioning, rolling, braiding, it's just braiding. It's very quick. So I'll show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do, so here, this is where my bench scraper that I was talking about comes in handy because I'm going to just clean off the counter a little bit, just give it a little scrape.
What kind of counter do you work on?
This is my kitchen counter. I think it's Caesar stone. I clean it really well before I bake. I have a big, huge sill pat that sometimes I use, like one of those silicone mats. But I only use that usually if I'm making something kind of messy, like rugelach or babka, because that way it kind of contains the chocolate goo. But this I don't mind cleaning. It's not so much work to clean off this counter. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the first one, the first ball, and I'm gonna show you what I do with it. Will you give us your sourdough recipe? Of course. Just find me afterwards, send me a message, and I'm happy to share that with you. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn it over so that the bottom is up at the top. And let me see if I can tilt this a little so maybe you can see a little better. And I'm going to kind of turn it in. We're gonna make kind of a hot dog shape. So you can see, kind of roll it until we get like this little kind of cigar shape. Do you see that? And then we're gonna go and do that for all of them. So this is what I was talking about when I said you're kind of building tension in your strands. And this is why it rises so nicely and you get a nice height. If you don't feel like doing this, you definitely don't have to. This is how I found I get a really nice shape on my challah. Some people use tins, like they'll buy those tins from Challah Hungarian, the ones that are oval shaped. I think I actually have some here. I can show you. And it kind of gives it the height without having to do all the steps because of the shape. But I find that when I use these, my dough it stays really light on the bottom, doesn't get nice and brown, doesn't cook so well, and sometimes, yeah, I don't always like that. Okay, and then we're just gonna roll them out. So we're gonna start again from the first one, because if you try to do it from the last one, you'll get some resistance. The dough will kind of shrink as you roll. So we're just gonna go back to the first one. I like
Leah,
to, yeah.
On Challah Baking for Dummies, I posted some videos of interesting braiding.
Oh, cool, neat. I'll have to check that out. Thank you. So I like to taper the ends. So I just kind of give the ends a little extra roll and keep the middle kind of fat because I like the way that looks.
Now, is that a half a pound of dough you're working with now for that challah? Is that a half pound or a pound?
No, it's a pound. But you could do the exact same thing with half a pound. You do go through the exact same procedure. Okay, so sometimes, you know, I'll just make sure they're kind of keeping their shape because the dough likes to shrink back. If that happens and it's really shrinking a lot and you're having a hard time getting it to stay in a strand, just cover it and walk away, give it a few minutes to rest, and then come back in about 5 or 10 minutes and you'll see that it'll stop doing that. It'll be a lot easier to work with. Okay, so I have my 4 strands here. I kind of tapered them on the bottom. You can see, and then I smush them together. The dough is really nice and easy to work with. I don't really have to add flour to the top or to the bottom or anything. And we're gonna braid. So I'm gonna show you how I do my 4 braid. I like to repeat a mantra over and over again in my head because I find that it helps me keep my spot. Now I don't really have to do it anymore, but for like years, every time I did a 4 braid, I would just like repeat the same words over and over again so I wouldn't get lost in my braiding. So what I do, this is what I repeat: over 2, back under 1. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, you ready? I'm going to take the strand all the way at the end, and we're going to go over 2 and then back under 1. So it just means back under the one right before it. So we're going to do that again from the other side. So you can see 4 over 2, so over 1, 2, back under 1. And then we're going to keep on going from the other side. Over 2 strands, back under 1 strand. 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 And you can see at the end, we're kind of out of dough. We'll just pinch it together. So I'm going to show you now. Kind of pinch, pinch at the end. Kind of, I usually give it a little roll, and then I take the end pieces and I kind of tuck them under.
Okay.
And then I fluff it up, and there you go. So it makes like a really nice shape.
And
then
that's a pound of challah, that little challah in your hand?
Yeah, but it looks little now. When it rises, it's going to be huge. You'll see. It'll look like a big challah. So this dough that I had already, it's a little bit soft. I can see that some of the strands are kind of, if I let it rise like this, the strands might kind of meld together as it rises, and I want them to keep nice definition. This doesn't always happen, but if it's really humid out, or if I maybe added a little extra water that I shouldn't have added, then sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of flour, I'll sprinkle it on top, and then I'll just kind of rub it on, because what that does is when the dough rises, the strands will stay defined. That's all it does. It just used like a tiny sprinkle. It wasn't a lot. And then you're going to want to take this and put it on a baking sheet. I have a parchment lined baking sheet, and let it rise again until it's really nice and puffy. Egg wash it. I like to give it 2 egg washes so that it gets nice and golden brown, and then bake it.
How long do you let it rise the second time now?
So it really depends on how warm your kitchen is, because like I said before, if your kitchen is very warm, then it's going to take less time to rise. For me, I found 45 minutes is around how long I want it to go for, but sometimes it's an hour. Sometimes it's a little longer than an hour. If it's really hot in my kitchen, if I have 2 ovens, if I have both ovens going really hot, if I'm, baking bread in both ovens, it's going to be like half an hour because they rise really quickly. Yeah. And you want to cover it while you're letting them rise. Okay, egg wash. Let's talk about the egg wash. Egg wash, the way that I do it, I'm not sure if this was on the original recipe, so if it wasn't, my apologies. You're going to want to write it in. I use an egg yolk and 2 teaspoons of water, and that's how I do my egg wash. An egg yolk and 2 teaspoons of water. So I egg wash it usually at about a half an hour after it started to rise, and then I'll do it again right before it goes in the oven. So I like to do 2 egg washes because that gives it a nice golden brown color. Do you guys want to see a 6 braid? Should we do that?
Do you cover the challah now?
Yeah, you should definitely cover it.
And it goes in the fridge.
But I'm going to put it on a sheet in a minute when I can do that.
There are many ways to do the 4 and the 6.
So many ways. And there are a million ways to make challah too. This is just how I
Right.
do it. But yeah, there's no one way to do it, which is what's so great about challah baking. And what's so fun about the challah baking group on Facebook that I have, because everybody posts their recipes and different tips, and it's fun to learn from each other. For sure.
Your dough seems so easy to work with.
Yeah, that's why I use it. Because because I found, like, I've tried a bunch of recipes, and this is really just nice, you know. It's nice to use, nice to work with, for sure. Yeah, and the challah tastes really good. So if you try it, it's delicious. Hopefully. Somebody asked a question. Sorry, let me just go back there. How long did it rise the first time? Where do your dough work with half a wheat? Okay, so how long did it rise the first time? My dough here rose for about 2 hours. My kitchen's a little chilly, but I think, you know, it depends how warm your kitchen is. And then somebody said, would it work with half whole wheat? For sure. You can definitely try half whole wheat. I mentioned before that you might want to try replacing 2 cups with whole wheat to start with, and then seeing how that goes and then moving up. I've done it half whole wheat before. It tastes really good. You can use spelt, you can use white whole wheat. It's all delish. So also at this point, if you wanted to like stuff your challah with anything, you could do it now. So you can roll out your strands and then stuff it with all kinds of stuff. I think Karen is here somewhere on this phone call. Maybe I know she does all kinds of cool flavors and stuff like that. And I have a friend who will use the aluminum tins like I showed you before, and before they put the braid in, they'll put something in the bottom. So like honey or roasted garlic or sauteed onions, and then they'll put the challah on top of it, and then it'll actually like infuse into the challah as it bakes, which is really yummy. So it's kind of an alternative, because we see a lot of people who do toppings, but this is kind of another way to get that yummy flavor into the challah without having it kind of fall all over the challah on top. Okay, so we're gonna do 6. So I'm gonna make my little hot dogs.
Okay,
here, and then we're gonna open it.
From this amount, you have 2 challahs, right? One bigger and one smaller.
I actually usually get about 4 medium-sized challahs out of this recipe.
Okay.
Or you could do 2 pretty big challahs.
Okay.
Or you can have one like ceremonial challah if you're going to do like a bar mitzvah or something.
Okay, so only 2 people.
Oh, please tilt my camera down. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Now another question: if I don't do this now, can I put in the freezer till Friday?
Yeah. So I prefer to bake the challah and then freeze it. I don't love to freeze the dough.
Okay.
Because I just find that you don't get as nice of a rise from it. But I do know that people do it. So you could do it. You could either freeze your dough or freeze the challah already done.
I don't. I'm asking you because I tried from the freezer and this didn't come out, did not raise.
Right. Yeah. So
but 24 hours is not the freezer, regular.
In the fridge. That's right. Somebody's saying, how do you know the end point in the rising? So you want it to hold an indentation, to not bounce back when you stick your finger in the dough to indent it. So like this is still a piece of that dough that was rising from before. And like you can see, it doesn't fill in when I indent it. That means that it's ready to go. But basically you want it to double in bulk for the first rise. And for the second rise, when it's after you braided it, when you're ready to put it into the oven, you just want it to be really nice and puffy. Some people, I've heard the question a lot, like, why is my challah cracking or stretching along the braids? And usually that's because you haven't let it rise enough before it goes in the oven. So you didn't let the braided challah rise enough. Somebody says, do you make 4 challahs from this? Yeah, so I usually do like 4 medium sized challahs.
So what's the 1 pound business? The challah is 1 pound or all?
Yeah, yeah, you can really like, you can just ignore that. I do that because I sell my challahs. So I like to have like the sizes. I like to do 1 pound and 1/2 pound, but you definitely do not need to measure them out to 1 pound, 1/2 pound. You know, you could just section off the dough and go from there. So,
and 4 out of this recipe, 4 challahs is a good amount to get out of it.
Yeah, you can really get 4 like small to medium sized challahs out of it.
Okay. So could we let this rise tonight, put it in the refrigerator, and then braid it tomorrow?
Yeah, but I would not let it rise before you refrigerate it. I would just put it straight into the refrigerator because it'll rise in the fridge.
Okay, so let it rise in the fridge overnight and to braid it. Okay.
Yep, and then braid it tomorrow for sure. Okay, so now I have 6.
But how she will rise in the fridge?
So I did the same thing. Do you have a question, Rita?
Yes, because how in the cold fridge, how it will rise?
It really does, because it rises slowly. So it really does rise. So you won't be able to put it in the fridge and have it ready in an hour, but it will be ready in about 4 or 5 hours if you put it in the fridge to rise. And if you let it go 24 hours, it's totally fine. It just develops a little bit of flavor in the fridge. It's fine. And some people prefer to work with dough that rose for longer, like a long, slow rise. Some people don't. You'll have to see what your preference is. I like it from the fridge, but you know, either way is good. So I have 6 strands here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the second strand and put it all the way out to the end. So the second strand to the left is going all the way to the right. So second to the end, and then the first one goes to the middle. So I also have a mantra for this because I find it just helps me. So I just do second to the end, first to the middle. So we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to repeat it from the other side now. So second to the end, first to the middle. And then we're just going to keep on going. Second to the end, first to the middle. 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 And then we're just gonna we're gonna do what we did before. Smush the ends a little bit, kind of give them a little roll out, tuck them under, and then kind of fluff it up. Ta-da! And then I'm gonna do the same thing with the flour because this dough is a little bit soft and I wanna keep the distinct braids. So we're just gonna give it a little bit of that, just a little bit, so the braids don't kind of meld together. But if you don't have a really soft dough that you're working with, then you don't have to worry about that. And that's how you do a 6 braid. And then before you put it in the oven, after your egg wash, you can use any kind of topping that you want. So you can use everything, but the bagel seasoning is really popular. That's really delicious. You can use za'atar. You can do, sometimes I'll do different herbs, like I'll put thyme, rosemary, and like granulated garlic. You could do sauteed onions. You could do sesame, poppy seeds. Sometimes I use nigella seeds, which you can also buy at Hungarian or Jewel or any of those places. And those are really yummy. They have a nice flavor to them. And if you mix them with white sesame seeds, it creates like a really cool looking challah that really pops. So many different options. You could do cinnamon sugar.
When do you put that on, before the egg wash or after the egg wash?
After. So it's right before it goes in the oven. So you do both egg washes and then you top it and put it in the oven. Also, vanilla sugar is really tasty if you have a sweet tooth.
How long do you bake it for?
It depends on the size of the challah. If you have a big challah, it'll take 45 minutes to an hour. If you have small challahs, it'll take 20 to 30 minutes. You want to look at the challah, you want to look for a golden brown crust and keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't burn. If you have an oven that has a hot spot, you want to turn the tray in the middle so that it bakes evenly. Yeah. If you like crusty challah, if you're a person that likes crusty challah, something that you can do is you can put a cup of boiling water in the oven while it bakes, and that'll make it nice and crusty.
That's at 350, right?
Yep. Do you take the challah temperature? I don't, but you could. I'm sorry, but I can't remember exactly what temperature you would bake it to. But if anybody remembers, I know some people take the internal temperature of the challah when they're done, like with a meat thermometer or something. I don't do that. I just wait till it looks golden brown. Does anybody have any questions? No questions? Okay.
What's the recipe for 5 pounds?
What's the recipe for 5 pounds? So I think you just times this by 3.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that this is a third of 5 pounds. But if you want, you can connect with me afterwards and I can double check and send you 5 pounds, the correct recipe for 5 pounds.
What other bread groups do you belong to on Facebook?
Oh my gosh, so many. Too many. Like artisan bread bakers and sourdough, something, perfect sourdough. I think there's another one like I don't know. I think that I'm part of like 3 sourdough Facebook groups. And then there's the challah group that I'm in. I think that that's about it, but it's a lot of fun if you really like baking bread, which I do.
Would you
Is there somewhere to review the braiding aspect of it?
Yeah.
Yes, totally. So I would recommend if you're on Facebook to join the group that I mentioned, the Challah Baking for Dummies. There are so many great videos that people posted and lots of tips and stuff like that over there. So there's lots of stuff there that you can see. And also this session is recorded and you can, we can get you a copy and you can just review the braiding part.
Would you ever teach a class on sourdough bread, how to make it?
Yeah, sourdough is so much fun. The only thing is that sourdough takes a lot of time. So like every rising step that you do for challah is like multiplied by 10 for sourdough. So we would have to do it in steps. We do 10 minutes at a time. It's a lot of fun, but like instead of doing a lot of it at once, you're gonna end up doing it in kind of stages. So usually what I do for sourdough is like I'll start it at night and then I'll do some stuff the next morning and then I won't bake it until the following night. Just the schedule is really stretched out. But if I can think of a way to do it over Zoom in kind of one go, then I will.
What's the difference between sourdough bread and the no-knead bread?
So sourdough bread does not have any commercial yeast in it. So we use yeast to leaven our bread, and sourdough bread uses a sourdough starter, which is a mixture of flour and water that's fermented. So no-knead bread is usually, at least from my experience, has a little bit of yeast in it, and then it's mixed and let to sit. And the long fermentation process that you use from the no-knead helps develop the gluten without any kneading. So usually they'll use just like a little pinch of yeast, like 1/8 of a teaspoon. So instead of using what we did, which was like a tablespoon, use a really small amount and let it rise really slowly, which helps the gluten develop over time.
I'm sorry, you repeat, right? If 6 pieces, then we put second, we take second from the end and then in the middle.
Right.
Right. But now I already forgot about 4 pieces. If it's 4 pieces, then
I do over 2, back under 1.
Okay.
That's easier.
Okay, thank you. Over.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
It was very good. Thank you very much.
Great
You're
job.
welcome. I'm so happy that you guys joined me, and feel free to ask me any questions that you might have. I'm really happy to help, and I hope you'll join us at the next event. We're going to do babka baking, which is going to be so much fun.
My
And
granddaughters
last,
want to come. They want to learn how to make babka.
great, super fun. We'll all do it together.
Thank you very
Um,
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Good
much.
night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was very nice.
Thanks.
Okay, I don't know how to shut it. So when you shut it, I'll get off. I don't. Oh, I see. Leave.